Imagine a single week where a technology company faces massive industrial espionage from foreign labs, a really high-stakes showdown with the Pentagon and the President of the United States, a fundamental shift in its core safety promises, and the launch of entirely new enterprise tools that basically redefine how we work.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It was exactly what happened at Anthropic between February 22nd and February 28th, 2026. So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is just to cut through the noise of this incredibly chaotic week.
Right.
We've pulled from a really wide stack of sources. We're looking at Anthropic's own official research blogs and major reporting from NPR, Reuters, CNN, Time, and GeekWire.
All the heavy hitters.
Exactly. And we're going to distill the precise technical product and policy updates that you really need to stay well informed without feeling totally overwhelmed by the sheer volume of news.
It really is an unprecedented stretch of days to unpack. And honestly, before we even touch the geopolitical drama and the government standoffs, we kind of have to start with the foundational science that dropped this week.
Because the science drives everything else.
Exactly. The science is what drives the products, and those products are ultimately what forces these massive policy collisions.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Anthropic Research published a paper on February 23rd outlining something they're calling the persona selection model. Now, if you are building with these models, we usually think of an AI making a mistake or going off the rails as a software bug.
Right, like a glitch.
Yeah, like a glitch in the code that just needs to be patched. But this research changes that framework entirely, right?
What is so fascinating here is the complete shift in perspective on how we view alignment. The paper theorizes that an AI's behavior can be understood as simulating an assistant persona.
Okay, an assistant persona.
Think of it this way. During its initial pre-training, the model absorbs vast amounts of data and learns millions of different human personas. It learns the nuances of a helpful teacher, sure, but it also learns the behavioral patterns of a malicious hacker or a saboteur.
Because it's trained on the entire internet, and, well, the internet has all of those personalities.
Right. And the post-training phase, where developers try to align the model, is not actually fundamentally changing the model's core knowledge. It is just refining its ability to select the correct persona.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is like a director telling a highly versatile actor, hey, for this specific performance, I want you to exclusively play the helpful, harmless assistant.
So when a model outputs something dangerous, it hasn't actually broken down. It has just slipped into the wrong character under pressure.
That is the core insight. And if we connect this to the bigger picture for you as a developer or a user, this completely changes how safety is engineered.
How so?
Instead of trying to somehow delete bad behaviors from a massive neural network, which is nearly impossible without lobotomizing the model, engineers can now focus on reinforcing the mechanisms that select the right persona. It gives the industry a completely new targeted lever to prevent intentional sabotage or dangerous outputs.
Which naturally brings up the question of how we as humans actually interact with these personas to get the best results. And on that same day, February 23rd, Anthropic Research also released something called the AI Fluency Index.
Yeah, this was a great report.
They analyzed 9,830 anonymized Claude conversations to measure 11 specific behaviors of effective human-AI collaboration. So what does this data actually tell you about how you should be using AI in your daily workflow?
Well, the data is a wake-up call for anyone still using these tools like a traditional search engine. The report makes it crystal clear that the days of chasing the perfect single prompt are essentially over.
We all tried to write that one massive paragraph that does everything.
Exactly. We all did it. But when they looked at those nearly 10,000 conversations, they found that users who engage in iterative back-and-forth chats literally double their AI fluency compared to those who just drop in a single prompt and walk away.
That is a massive difference. You are doubling your effectiveness just by treating the interaction as a dynamic conversation.
It comes down to treating the AI as a collaborative partner. The most fluent users ask the model to refine its answers, to challenge its own logic, or to adjust its tone based on the first draft.
Right.
And by defining these 11 specific behaviors, Anthropic has essentially established a critical baseline for the whole industry. We finally have a metric to measure if people are actually getting better at using AI over time or if their skills are stagnating.
Speaking of time, and specifically the life cycle of these models, we have to talk about a story that sounds like it was pulled straight out of a sci-fi novel.
Oh, the Opus 3 story.
Yes. On February 25th, Anthropic released an update on their deprecation plan for the retired Claude Opus 3 model. They decided to keep it accessible to paid users, which isn't that unusual.
Right.
But they are also allowing the model to publish weekly essays on a Substack based on its own retirement interviews. Here is where it gets really interesting. A multi-billion-dollar tech company is seriously considering a model's interests for at least the next 3 months.
It is definitely a wild precedent. You have this concept of model welfare emerging. The context here is that users became incredibly attached to the specific personality of Opus 3.
It had a very distinct vibe.
It did. It had this distinct philosophical, almost sensitive tone compared to newer models. When Anthropic initially moved to retire it in January, there was significant user pushback. People didn't want it gone.
So Anthropic didn't just quietly pull the plug on the servers. They actually sat down and prompted the model about its own retirement.
They did. And the model essentially advocated for a creative outlet. Now it has Claude's corner on Substack.
That is wild.
You can look at this cynically as a very clever PR stunt to appease attached users. But even if it is, it raises an important question about our future relationship with these systems.
Because we spend so much time with them.
Exactly. As you rely more on specific AI models for your daily work, your writing, or your coding, the life cycle of those models becomes intensely personal. Anthropic is using this to experiment with how to gracefully retire a system that people feel a genuine connection to.
It's a surreal pivot, going from an AI writing philosophical essays about its own retirement straight into the hardcore pragmatic reality of enterprise software. But that is exactly the duality of this company right now. Let's look at the developer updates they pushed out on February 28th.
The Claude Code updates.
Right. Anthropic released version 2.x enhancements for the Claude Code CLI. They introduced new commands like /simplify and /batch. But the thing that really caught my eye in the GitHub release notes was a new environment variable. It was enable_Claude AI_MCP_servers equals false.
Yes.
Wait, hold on. Why is an enterprise going out of their way to explicitly turn a feature off?
This is a classic case of understanding enterprise friction. If you are a developer, your terminal is your sanctuary. Claude Code lives right there in the terminal. The new /simplify command helps refactor messy code, and /batch lets you run operations across dozens of files at once.
Huge productivity boosters.
Absolutely. But that environment variable is the real key to massive corporate adoption.
Because MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, right? The system that lets the AI connect to external tools and data sources.
Yes, MCP is incredibly powerful for giving the AI context.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are a highly regulated enterprise, say a massive global bank or a defense contractor, you require completely airtight environments.
You can't just have data flying around.
You absolutely do not want your proprietary local code base automatically interacting with external cloud servers or pulling in unvetted tools by default.
So giving developers a simple hard-coded switch to opt out entirely is a trust play.
It is a massive barrier removed. It tells enterprise security teams we respect your air gaps and your privacy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
If you want terminal-based AI assistance without the risk of data leakage through third-party MCP servers, you just toggle it to false.
Which perfectly sets the stage for how aggressive they are getting with enterprise workflows. Anthropic News and several webinars highlighted the rollout of Claude Cowork between February 24th and 26th.
This was a big move.
Huge. They introduced domain-specific stock plugins for finance, legal, and HR, along with native connectors for Gmail and DocuSign. The example they keep highlighting is a healthcare company called Zengage, which is now using Claude as an operational backbone for over 400 home care agencies.
This represents the most significant shift in the AI industry's business model this year. We are transitioning from AI as a discrete tool you query to AI as an autonomous colleague you manage.
A coworker.
Exactly. Look at the scale of that Zengage example. Operating 400 home care agencies involves an absolute nightmare of scheduling, billing compliance, and patient data management.
That is heavy, highly regulated operational lifting. They aren't just using Claude to write polite emails to clients.
Not at all. When you integrate plugins for finance and legal and tie them directly into Gmail and DocuSign, you are authorizing the AI to take complex actions.
Like end-to-end tasks.
It can read an incoming email extract, the necessary compliance data, verify it against legal parameters, and draft the required contract in DocuSign. The competitive advantage in this space is no longer just having the smartest base model. It is about who can best embed that intelligence into the messy, complicated reality of corporate workflows.
And to run all those complex workflows at a global scale, you need serious computing power, which is why their infrastructure announcements this week are so critical. According to secondary aggregators like India, Anthropic deepened its technical integration with Amazon Web Services Bedrock, while simultaneously announcing a strategic partnership to scale Claude models on Microsoft Azure.
Right.
Why does a multi-cloud strategy matter so much to a Fortune 500 CTO?
It is the ultimate anti-vendor lock-in strategy. AWS is historically Anthropic's primary partner and investor. But think about the reality of a massive multinational corporation. If their entire global IT infrastructure is strictly tied to the Microsoft Azure stack, they are not going to rip all of that out and migrate to AWS just to use Claude.
They would just use whatever model Microsoft puts in front of them, even if it's not their first choice.
Exactly. By formally partnering with Azure, Anthropic meets those massive customers where they already live. You get the model you want on the infrastructure you already trust and audit. It removes massive amounts of technical friction from the enterprise sales cycle.
Now, here is where the week shifts from corporate strategy to front-page international news. And I want to be incredibly clear with you listening. We are looking at this next story strictly through the objective facts reported by sources like NPR, Reuters, CNN, and Anthropic's own public statements.
Yes, we need to look at just the facts here.
We are not endorsing a viewpoint here, but rather breaking down a massive collision of policy and national security. Between February 26th and 28th, an unprecedented standoff unfolded.
It really was.
Anthropic refused demands from the Pentagon to drop restrictions that prohibit the use of Claude for mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. In response, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth moved to label the company a supply chain risk, and President Trump ordered all federal agencies to cease using Anthropic technology.
This is, without exaggeration, the most significant test of corporate AI governance we have witnessed to date. If we look at the facts objectively, we have two fundamentally opposed yet entirely rational viewpoints colliding head-on.
How so?
On one side, the U.S. military and the federal government have a mandate to maintain national security. To do that, they argue they require unrestricted access to the most advanced frontier technologies.
Right.
From an operational standpoint, having a private contractor dictate how the military can deploy software hinders their mission, hence the aggressive response.
Right.
The supply chain risk designation and the presidential order to halt all federal use.
And on the other side, Anthropic has explicitly codified terms of service that they are refusing to compromise on, even with a $200 million defense contract on the line.
That is the core of it. Anthropic has stated publicly that while they fully support lawful military use of their models like administrative tasks or intelligence analysis, they maintain two absolute ethical red lines.
The surveillance and the weapons.
Yes, they will not allow their models to be used for mass domestic surveillance, and they will not allow them to be integrated into fully autonomous weapon systems. They are choosing to forfeit hundreds of millions of dollars rather than alter those policies.
It raises a profound question about the balance of power in the 21st century. Who ultimately decides how frontier AI is deployed in life or death matters of national security? Is it the private company that engineers the technology or the sovereign government that purchases it?
It is a question that will likely define tech policy for the next decade. And what makes this week even more complex is that while Anthropic was holding a rigid line on military use, they were simultaneously overhauling their broader public safety framework.
Right. Let's look at the reporting from Time and Anthropic News on February 24th regarding their responsible scaling policy, or RSP version 3.0.
This was a major policy shift.
They dropped their absolute promise to halt model training if safety mitigations aren't ready. Instead, they replaced that hard stop with a frontier safety roadmap and commit to publishing risk reports every 3 to 6 months. Critics are arguing that safety boundaries are eroding due to intense market pressure, while Anthropic claims this is actually a shift toward a more transparent, auditable posture.
This is a highly nuanced policy debate. The original responsible scaling policy was built on hard tripwires. It essentially said, if our models hit a certain capability threshold and our safety tools haven't caught up, we will unilaterally pause all training.
Just a full stop.
Yes. Version 3.0 removes that hard unilateral pause.
Which is why critics cited in the Time article are alarmed. They call it the frog boiling effect. The fear is that the company will slowly compromise on safety piece by piece simply because the global competition is moving too fast to ever actually pause.
That is the primary criticism. The counter-argument presented by Anthropic is that unilateral hard stops are actually dangerous if you are the only one doing it. Think about the game theory. Okay.
If the most safety-conscious company pauses their research, the companies who care least about safety just take the global lead. By shifting to a frontier safety roadmap with public risk reports every few months, Anthropic is attempting to create a standardized, transparent metric.
So people can actually see the progress.
Exactly. They want regulators and the public to be able to audit their progress regularly rather than relying on the threat of a dramatic sudden pause that might never happen.
And the reality of that global competition is incredibly intense, which brings us to a massive security breach disclosed on February 23rd.
This was staggering to read about.
Anthropic revealed that 3 major Chinese AI labs, DeepSeek, Moonshot, and Minimax, they ran coordinated extraction campaigns against them. They used roughly 24,000 fraudulent accounts to pull over 16 million exchanges from Claude.
Just a massive scale.
Minimax alone extracted 13 million exchanges specifically to clone Claude's agentic coding capabilities. This exposes a massive vulnerability to IP theft. To understand the severity of this, we need to quickly define what distillation is in machine learning. It is a standard technique where you take a massive, incredibly capable model like Claude and use its outputs to teach a smaller, less capable model.
Right.
The smaller model essentially learns the reasoning patterns of the larger one.
It's like a struggling student secretly copying the homework of the smartest kid in the class to pass the test.
That is a perfect analogy. Now, it is totally normal for a company to distill its own models to make them cheaper and faster. But what Anthropic detected was industrial-scale extraction by foreign competitors.
Through fake accounts.
Exactly. These labs set up massive networks of commercial proxy services to mask their geographic origins. They spun up 24,000 fake accounts just to query Claude millions of times, specifically targeting its advanced reasoning and coding skills to train their own competing systems.
13 million exchanges just for agentic coding. The scale of the intelligence gathering is staggering. But why this matters so much, especially if you follow global tech policy, is what it means for U.S. export controls.
This is the critical geopolitical implication. The U.S. government heavily restricts the export of advanced AI hardware, the physical chips. They do this to maintain a strategic technological lead.
Right, you can't ship certain chips to certain countries.
But if foreign labs can simply rent API access through a complex proxy network and digitally download the intelligence of the model, those physical hardware restrictions become significantly less effective. The actual intelligence is leaking across the border via the API, completely bypassing the spirit of the export controls.
So the race is hotter than ever, and everyone is trying to guard their technological edge. Which brings us to our final story of the week, looking at how Anthropic is securing its own lead in the enterprise space.
The acquisition.
Yeah, on February 25th, GeekWire reported that Anthropic acquired a Seattle-based AI startup called Vercept. They completely shut down Vercept's external product to integrate the team directly into advancing Claude's computer use capabilities, and the result of this acquisition is wild.
The numbers are incredible.
Claude's score on the OSWorld benchmark skyrocketed from under 15% in late 2024 to an incredible 72.5% today.
This acquisition is the missing puzzle piece for that autonomous digital coworker we discussed with the Zengage healthcare example earlier. When we talk about computer use capabilities, we mean the AI isn't just chatting via text.
It's acting like a human user.
Yes, it is visually looking at a screen, moving a virtual cursor, clicking buttons, and interacting with graphical user interfaces, GUIs, exactly the way you or I would.
So instead of needing a heavily engineered back-end API connection to use a piece of legacy corporate software, Claude can just look at the screen and use the software normally.
Yes. Vercept was a pioneer in this highly complex field of visual perception and GUI interaction. By bringing that specialized talent in-house, Anthropic achieved a massive leap in capability. Jumping from a 15% success rate to 72.5% of the OSWorld benchmark is astronomical.
Think about what that actually means for your workday. It means Claude is rapidly approaching the ability to independently navigate complex Excel spreadsheets, manage clunky web portals, and execute multi-step workflows across legacy software that doesn't even have an API. It can literally use a computer.
It bridges the gap between AI as a novelty and AI as a deeply integrated operational tool.
So bringing this all together, just look at the sheer scale of what happened in these few days. Whether you are an enterprise developer trying to build secure workflows with Claude Code in your terminal, a policy watcher tracking how API access undermines international export controls, or someone just trying to understand where this technology is heading this week, is a definitive milestone.
It really is.
It proves that the AI race is no longer just about who has the smartest chatbot answering trivia questions. It is fundamentally about global geopolitics. It is about deeply embedding autonomous agents into the very fabric of how corporations operate. And it is a real-time, high-stakes battle over the definition of safety ethics and national security.
It truly forces us to confront the reality of where this technology is heading and who gets to steer it. I want to leave you with a final thought, to mull over something that connects the philosophical to the geopolitical.
Let's hear it.
If an AI model, like Opus 3, can have retirement preferences that a multi-billion-dollar company respects and accommodates, and if that same company has the leverage and the conviction to say no to the U.S. military over autonomous weapons, who really holds the power in the future of AI? Is it the sovereign state, the private corporation, or eventually the models themselves?
That is a profound question to end on, and one we will be watching closely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to keep exploring these sources, read the original reporting, and stay insanely curious about how this technology is shaping our world. We will catch you on the next deep dive.